On the night my family told me the greatest gift I could give my sister was to disappear, I finally did. That sentence still echoes in my chest, like a church bell after midnight. My name is Lila Hart. I'm 26 years old, and I grew up in a town so small you could drive through it in 7 minutes flat. Cedar Ridge, Oregon. To outsiders, our white 2-story house with the wraparound porch looked like the picture of warmth. Neighbors waved. Casseroles appeared on our doorstep when someone got sick. And my parents, Patricia and Michael, smiled like they were living the perfect American dream. But behind those painted shutters, the dream wasn't mine. It was all for my older sister, Ava Hart, who was 4 years ahead of me and 4 lifetimes more adored. To my parents, Ava wasn't just a daughter. She was the chosen one. Patricia would beam whenever Ava walked in the room, as if the sun had decided to live in her eyes. Michael would brag about her test scores and her internships at the family's accounting firm. And me, I was the shadow in the background, always trying to prove I belonged in a house that never felt like it wanted me. When I was 6, I spent weeks practicing piano, fingers blistering as I tried to perfect Clair de Lune. At the recital, I clutched my sheet music, hands trembling, and played every note with my whole heart. I came home with a little certificate that said first place. Patricia glanced at it for half a second before smiling at Ava and saying, "Your sister just got first in the state math competition. Isn't she amazing?" My paper slipped from her fingers to the counter like it was nothing more than a grocery list. I told myself to try harder. At 14, I stumbled onto something I didn't fully understand. Patricia left a stack of bills on the kitchen table. One envelope had my name on it, but the address printed on top wasn't ours. It was the address of Hart & Hart Accounting, the firm my parents owned. When I asked, she snapped, "It's just paperwork. Don't question it." I ended up paying the $800 insurance bill with money I'd earned babysitting and bagging groceries. They barely thanked me. Still, I convinced myself that maybe this was the way to win them over. By being useful, years blurred into a routine of errands and invisible sacrifices. I stayed in town for college, instead of chasing bigger dreams out of state. I worked part-time at a marketing agency, but always left early to drive Mom to appointments or cover the front desk at Dad's office. Every time I tried to speak up, Patricia's eyes would narrow, her tone sharp. "Stop making everything about you, Lila. Be more like your sister." But I kept hoping that someday, maybe on a birthday or a holiday, they would look at me and see more than the girl who tried too hard. I remember blowing out 26 candles on a store-bought cake alone in my tiny apartment, whispering the same wish I had every year. "Please, just let them love me." I didn't know then that the wish itself was the chain holding me down. I didn't realize that the moment I let go of it, when I finally listened to their cruel command to vanish, my entire life would shift. That night, as I stared at the old insurance statement with my name and my father's office address, a question I had buried for years began to claw its way back. Why was my signature showing up on documents I never signed? If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit subscribe and stay tuned to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the forgotten daughter. I truly want to know how far my story will travel across the world and who out there might understand what it feels like to be erased by the very people meant to love you. The week leading up to my sister's wedding in Cedar Ridge, Oregon, was chaos. I had turned 26 just months earlier, and instead of building a life of my own, I was drowning in ribbons, fabric swatches, and checklists that belonged to my sister's big day. My apartment looked like a battlefield of glitter and glue. Every corner stacked with centerpieces and candle holders I'd hunted down on clearance, driving hours across state lines to find exactly what Patricia said Ava deserved. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I carried a heavy paper bag into my parents' living room, arms aching from the weight of velvet ribbons I had spent nights hand-tying into neat bows. Patricia sat on the couch in her pressed blouse, sipping tea like royalty. Michael was at the dining table, flipping through the firm's books as if he were calculating the town's destiny. Ava lounged nearby in a silk robe, her phone lighting up with texts from David. "Here are the ribbons," I said softly, placing the bag on the coffee table. My voice cracked, but no one noticed. Patricia pulled out a ribbon, inspected it for half a heartbeat, then looked around. "Where are the rest?" she asked, her nails clicking against the bag. My stomach clenched. I realized with a jolt I had left one small bundle at my apartment. "I'll run and grab it first thing tomorrow morning," I said quickly. Patricia's lips curled in disdain. "You forgot? Megan, this is exactly what I mean. You always ruin things. Your sister deserves a perfect day, and you can't even handle ribbons." Michael didn't even glance up. He tapped his pen against the page and muttered, "Ava would have had this sorted 2 weeks ago." My face burned. I turned to Ava, silently pleading for backup. She just smirked, then bent over her phone, scrolling, unbothered. Patricia sighed, her voice cold and final. "Honestly, Lila, the best gift you could give your sister on her wedding day is to stay away. Just disappear. For once, don't embarrass us." The words hit harder than any slap. My breath caught, and the room spun. They weren't joking. They wanted me gone, erased, like I was some stain on their perfect picture. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the bag. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked at the three of them, my mother, my father, my sister, and realized that no amount of effort had ever mattered. Slowly, I picked up my keys and walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Back in my apartment, the single bundle of forgotten ribbons sat on the counter, mocking me. I slumped into a chair, staring at the mess of receipts and contracts scattered across the table. I picked one up, the $4,500 venue deposit I had paid from my own account. Ava had seen me write that check. She had even smiled, whispered, "Thanks," before turning away. Yet, she had let them accuse me without saying a word. She had known the truth all along and still chose silence. That night, lying awake, I heard faint laughter drifting up from my parents' house across town. I closed my eyes, ready to shut it out, until I remembered Patricia's sharp voice downstairs, hissing, "After tomorrow, we'll use her account for the $12,000 correction fee. She won't even know until it's too late." My chest tightened. They weren't just excluding me from the wedding. They were planning to strip me bare the moment I was gone. The night before Ava's wedding, everything came crashing down. I walked into our living room, clutching the bag of velvet ribbons, trying to explain I had left one bundle back at my apartment. Patricia's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening around her teacup. "You forgot," she hissed. "You ruin everything, Lila. Always have, always will." Her voice was low, but sharp enough to cut through me. Michael looked up from his ledgers, his face carved from stone. "She's right. We've been patient long enough. Maybe the best thing you could do for this family is just stay gone." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard, but then I saw Patricia's smirk. She meant it. They both did. I turned to Ava, my last fragile hope. She stood near the stairs in her pale silk robe, her phone glowing in her hands. David, her fiancé, shifted uncomfortably beside her, his eyes fixed on the screen, as if pretending he hadn't heard. Ava didn't say a word. She just lowered her gaze, refusing to meet mine. My throat burned. My chest tightened, until I thought it might split in two. I wanted to scream, to demand they see me, to shout about the years I'd spent holding everything together while Ava lived her charmed life. But all I managed was a whisper. "Fine, if that's what you want, I'll disappear." I set the bag of ribbons down, turned, and walked out. The door slammed behind me, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel, marking the end of my sentence. That night, in my apartment, the silence was deafening. I sat at my kitchen table, the single forgotten bundle of ribbons lying in front of me, like a cruel joke. My phone buzzed again and again, with texts from friends at the wedding rehearsal. Blissfully unaware I had been banned. I didn't go the next day. I couldn't. Instead, I sat cross-legged on my bed, phone in hand, watching a shaky live stream from one of Ava's bridesmaids. There she was, Ava, gliding down the aisle in white lace, smiling as though she had the universe in her palm. My parents toasted with glasses of sparkling wine, their faces radiant, relieved, as if my absence was the secret ingredient to their perfect celebration. It was a strange thing, watching them rejoice without me. The girl who had spent nights glue-gunning decorations, juggling spreadsheets, and skipping meals to stretch her paycheck wasn't even a footnote in their story. For a moment, grief crushed me, heavy and suffocating. But then, something inside me shifted. The pain hardened, crystallized into a quiet resolve. Maybe leaving wasn't weakness. Maybe it was my way out. I started gathering papers scattered across the table, contracts, receipts, lists. That was when one sheet caught my eye. A loan application. My name was typed neatly at the top. The amount listed, $25,000. My stomach lurched. I traced the signature line. It was my name, written in my mother's handwriting. I had never seen this form before. At the bottom, in small block letters, was the witness signature, Susan Cole, the same woman my parents had trusted to capture every smile of Ava's wedding day. The same woman who had glanced at me last night with something unreadable in her eyes. It wasn't just about ribbons or being forgotten. My name was being used in ways I never agreed to. I stared at the paper, my pulse hammering in my ears. If Susan had been willing to vouch for a forgery once, what else had she done for them? The live stream ended with cheers as Ava kissed David. But all I could see was that forged signature, Susan's neat handwriting curling across the page, binding me to a debt I never made. The morning after the rehearsal, I woke with swollen eyes and a hollow chest. My apartment was half-packed already, boxes stacked by the door, the lone bundle of velvet ribbons still sitting on the counter, like a reminder of everything I wasn't. I stared at it for a long time before picking up my phone. My hands didn't shake this time. The first call I made was to my boss at the small marketing agency. I'd never asked for time off in the 3 years I'd been there, not even when I was sick. "I need a week," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Personal reasons?" He sighed, but agreed. In his silence, I realized how little anyone ever expected from me, and how much I could disappear without notice. Next, I met with a local real estate broker who specialized in cash buyers. My apartment had been my only true sanctuary in Cedar Ridge, the one place that was mine. Letting it go felt like tearing up roots I'd only just managed to grow. The broker flipped through his paperwork and said, "I can get you a fast close, but you'll have to accept $18,000 less than market value and cover a $1,500 closing fee. No inspections, no repairs, as is I signed anyway." Speed was worth more than pride. Every stroke of my pen felt like I was erasing another chain my parents had wrapped around me. That afternoon, I sat in the office of Karen Mitchell, a lawyer I'd met at a business networking event months earlier. She listened quietly as I laid out everything. Years of neglect, the constant demands, the forged loan document with my name scribbled at the bottom. When I finished, she tapped her pen against her notepad and leaned back. "Lila, if you go through with this, it's not just moving out. It's cutting ties, maybe for good. You need to be sure you're ready." I looked her dead in the eye. "I've been ready for years. I just didn't realize it." Until now, Karen studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right. First thing, those shared accounts with your parents. You can't just drain them. That could come back to bite you. What you can do is freeze them and move your contributions into an escrow-protected fund. That way, the money is safe, but can only be released for documented necessities, like your mom's medical bills. No one gets to rate it for a $12,000 correction fee." The logic was solid. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was on my side. Still, something gnawed at me. The loan document with my forged signature. Karen suggested we bring in a financial specialist. That's how I met Stephen Reynolds, a man with sharp eyes and a calm, deliberate voice. He reviewed the files, flipping through page after page. Then he froze. "Lila, have you seen this before?" He turned the monitor so I could see. It was a scanned copy of an old life insurance policy, taken out when I was still a teenager. My name was listed as the insured, but under beneficiary, I saw something that made my skin prickle. Ava Hart. Not my mother, not my father, my sister. Stephen's jaw tightened. This is highly unusual. Parents don't usually make one child the beneficiary of another's policy. We'll need to investigate where these funds were meant to go. I stared at the screen, my throat dry. Was this just another financial manipulation? Or had my parents been planning something far darker all along? For the first time, I wasn't just questioning my place in their hearts. I was questioning whether my own family had been preparing for my absence in ways I couldn't even imagine. 5 days on the road felt like 5 lifetimes. I left Cedar Ridge with nothing but 2 suitcases, my laptop, a few clothes, and the sapphire necklace my art teacher gave me back in high school. Everything else, my couch, my dishes, even the lamp I loved, went to strangers or thrift shops. I told myself the $1,200 I spent on gas, cheap motels, and bad coffee was the cost of freedom. Every mile east stretched the distance between me and the people who told me I should vanish. By the time I rolled into Seabrook, Maine, the air felt different. Salt clung to my skin. The wind carried the sharp cry of gulls, and the horizon wasn't farmland anymore, but water, endless and restless like the ache inside me. I found a listing for a weathered boathouse perched at the edge of the marsh. It wasn't much. Its wooden floors creaked like old bones, and the windows stuck when the humidity swelled. But it had a crooked charm. For the first time in my life, I held a lease signed only with my name. No parents, no sister, just me. But I wasn't entirely ready to be Lila Hart. Too many people in Oregon knew that name, and my parents had already twisted it into something ugly. So, for my freelance work, I used my middle name, L. Arden. It wasn't about hiding forever. It was about reclaiming control. Clients didn't ask who my family was, or whether I was as good as Ava. They just cared that my designs worked, that my words landed, and when they paid me, on time, in my own bank account, I felt a rush of pride I had never felt running errands for Patricia or crunching numbers for Michael. Days turned into a rhythm I'd never known. I'd wake to the cry of loons, brew coffee, and set up my laptop on the rickety table by the window. After hours of writing ad copy and designing logos, I'd walk down to the pier, breathing in the sharp, briny air. My legs would ache from long runs along the boardwalk, but my chest felt lighter, as if each step pounded out another layer of resentment. One morning, I ducked into a small cafe called Saltwater Brew. The smell of cinnamon and roasted beans wrapped around me before I even opened the door. Behind the counter stood Marina Torres, a woman in her late 40s, with curly dark hair pulled into a loose bun, her smile warm and unhurried. "New face," she said, sliding me a steaming mug before I even asked. "Seabrook's good for fresh starts. You'll see." Her words stopped me. I hadn't told her anything about myself, but she seemed to sense it. The way I carried my solitude, like a second skin. I managed a half smile. "Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Over the next week, I found excuses to stop by." Marina remembered my order, asked about my work, and never once compared me to anyone else. She treated me like I mattered, just as I was. One afternoon, as she wiped down the counter, she laughed lightly. "Funny thing," she said. "We once had this photographer here, Susan Cole. Thought she was talented, but I had to let her go. Clients accused her of leaking private photos. Whole mess." My fingers stiffened around my cup. Susan Cole, the same name scrawled as the witness on that forged loan document back in Oregon. My pulse spiked, heat rising up my neck. Susan wasn't just my parents' photographer. She had a history of betrayal, and somehow she was tied to both my family's finances and scandals across the country. I stared at Marina, my coffee suddenly bitter, and one thought drilled through my mind. What if Susan wasn't just a bystander? What if she was part of something much larger? And I had just stumbled into it again here in Seabrook. Back in Cedar Ridge, my parents were already rewriting the story. I didn't even have to be there to feel the daggers. My old phone buzzed nonstop with screenshots from a local community page. Patricia had posted a long, tear-stained message about how her ungrateful younger daughter had stolen money meant for Ava's wedding. She called me reckless, selfish, a burden they'd carried for too long. Michael chimed in beneath her post, typing words that cut sharper than any shout. "We trusted Lila, and she betrayed us. We gave her everything, everything." The word burned. I thought about every unpaid overtime shift, every canceled trip, every night I skipped dinner just to cover their bills. That wasn't everything. That was me giving them all I had. I sat at the wobbly kitchen table in my boathouse, my laptop glowing in the dim morning light, hands cold on the keyboard. I dialed Stephen Reynolds, my financial lawyer. He answered on the second ring. "They're saying I stole the money," I said flatly, "but you've seen the accounts." He pulled up the digital records while I paced the floor. "Lila, the escrow fund is intact. The system only releases payments with verified documentation. Look here, 2 months of pharmacy bills approved. Utilities approved. But last week, they submitted a request for $7,500, labeled Venue Upgrades. No receipts attached. It was denied automatically." I sank onto the couch, half laughing, half trembling. So, they tried to use me as their piggy bank again. And when it didn't work, they cried theft to the whole town. Stephen's voice was calm, but firm. "This is exactly why we set up the escrow. You're protected. Don't let their narrative pull you back in." I wanted to believe him, but the old fear gnawed at me. What if everyone in Cedar Ridge believed them? What if every neighbor who used to wave at our porch now pictured me as the heartless daughter who stole from her parents? That afternoon, another email pinged my inbox. This one wasn't from Patricia or Michael. It was from the furniture store that had processed the $25,000 loan application with my forged signature. They had done an internal review after Stephen's inquiry. Attached was an audio file, a call recorded for quality assurance. I pressed play. A woman's voice filled my tiny living room, crisp, measured, with that familiar sharpness I had grown up dreading. This needs to be approved under Lila Hart's name. It's urgent. We'll handle the rest on our end. It was unmistakable. Patricia. My chest felt like it caved in. All those years, I thought they just didn't love me enough. What if it was worse than that? What if they had been planning for me to take the fall? Not just for one bill, but for debts and schemes I never agreed to? I closed my laptop, staring at the salt-stained window as the sky outside turned gray. For the first time, I felt something stronger than sadness or anger. I felt suspicion. The proof wasn't just in my inbox. It was her voice, crystal clear, betraying me on tape. Just as I sat frozen, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't another accusation from Patricia or Michael. It was an email from Ava. The subject line read only, "I need to tell you something. Alone." My breath caught. What secret was Ava about to reveal? And why now? When Ava finally showed up in Seabrook, I almost didn't open the door. She stood there in a gray coat, hair damp from the ocean mist, her eyes darting everywhere but mine. For the first time in years, she looked small, like the golden glow had been dimmed. We sat across from each other at the little kitchen table, the wood scarred from years of salt air. She kept wringing her hands until I finally broke the silence. "What do you want, Ava?" I asked. My voice wasn't cruel, but it was cold, stripped of the desperate warmth I used to offer her. Her eyes filled instantly. "I should have said something," she whispered. "That loan, the bills, I knew. I knew what Mom was doing. She used your name because it was easier. She promised me she'd give me a bigger cut of the firm if I stayed quiet. 45%, Lila. She said you'd never notice the words hit harder than any slap ever could. I had always suspected something, but hearing her confess shattered what little piece of hope I'd been clutching. So you just let her ruin me?" I asked. Ava's lip trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought if I didn't rock the boat, if I just went along, maybe she'd finally be proud of me. I didn't realize how far she'd go. I didn't know about the insurance policy until I saw your lawyer's email. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You didn't know, but you knew enough. And you still said nothing when they told me to disappear." She flinched at my tone. "I'm sorry, Lila. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know who else to talk to." Her tears didn't move me the way they once would have. For years, I was the one crying at that kitchen table, begging for crumbs of approval. Now she wanted my sympathy because her golden pedestal was cracking. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay still. That night, my phone lit up with another message. Patricia's name glared on the screen. "Your mother's in the hospital. Come home. Be a daughter for once." The guilt rushed in like a tide, threatening to drown me. My mother was sick. I should go. I should sit by her side. That's what a good daughter does. But then I remembered Patricia's voice on that recording, calm and calculating, forging my name as if my life was just another column in her ledger. I remembered the years of being erased, so I made my choice. I opened my laptop, gathered every file, every receipt, every email, and that recording where her voice pleaded for urgent approval in Lila Hart's name. I sent it all to the State Accounting Ethics Board. My hands didn't shake this time. I knew what it meant. I knew it could destroy my father's reputation, strip him of the license he valued more than me. But for once, I wasn't carrying their sins on my shoulders. 10 days later, Stephen called. His voice was sharp, almost stunned. "Lila, they moved fast. The board has announced an emergency review. Your parents are under investigation." I hung up, staring at the ocean outside my window. For the first time, the water looked less like an escape and more like a horizon. A few hours later, another notification buzzed on my old phone. It wasn't from Patricia. It wasn't from Michael. It was from Susan Cole. The subject line froze my breath. "I can make this all disappear if you stay quiet." My hands hovered above the keyboard. Why was Susan offering me silence? And what exactly was she trying to bury? The email from Susan sat in my inbox like a ticking clock. "I can make this all disappear if you stay quiet." The words pulled me right back into that living room in Cedar Ridge, where every secret was a weapon and every smile carried a hidden blade. For a second, I almost laughed at the audacity. After everything, she thought I'd bargain away the truth. Number. Not anymore. I forwarded the entire thread to Stephen, attaching the forged loan documents, the receipts, and the recording with my mother's voice. Then I blocked Susan without a single reply. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with a strange, steady certainty. Days blurred into nights as I waited. I kept working under the name L. Arden, designing logos and campaigns for small businesses in Seabrook. I painted on the weekends, filling canvas after canvas with the colors I had once been told were a waste of time. Marina, the cafe owner who had become my friend, hung one of my paintings behind the counter. Customers asked about it. For the first time, people saw me without the shadow of my family's expectations. Then, on the 10th day, Stephen called. "Lila, they moved fast," he said. "The board reviewed the evidence. They've frozen your parents' firm. Patricia and Michael are being investigated for misusing funds and falsifying your signature. The firm will be placed under strict supervision, and restitution has already been ordered." I sank into my chair, clutching the phone, a mix of relief and grief washing over me. It was happening. The empire they built on lies was crumbling. And for once, I wasn't the one paying the price. A week later, news spread through Cedar Ridge. Neighbors who had called me a thief were now whispering about the truth. Patricia's posts disappeared, her words vanishing as if they'd never been written. Michael stopped showing up at the firm. The Harts, the so-called pillars of respectability, were now the subject of hushed gossip in their own town. And then Ava called. Her voice was small, fragile. "Lila, I've started therapy. I told Dr. Evans everything. About the policy, about Mom's promises, about how I let her use you. I can't undo it, but I can stop hiding. I'm sorry. For real this time." I closed my eyes, listening. Part of me longed to believe her, to reach across the years of silence. But another part of me remembered every birthday spent alone, every dream I'd buried to serve them. "I hope you find yourself too, Ava," I said softly. "But my life, it's here now." In Seabrook, I planted flowers outside my boathouse, their colors bursting against the gray wood. I joined Marina's book club, laughing late into the evening with people who had no idea who Patricia or Michael were. When I introduced myself as Lila Hart, not L. Arden, no one flinched. No one compared me to anyone else. One quiet evening, I stood on my porch, the marsh reflecting streaks of orange and pink across the water. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt real, whole, free. Life has taught me something I wish I'd known years ago. True strength isn't in clinging to family that wounds you, hoping they'll change. It's in protecting your own worth, even if it means walking away. Love and forgiveness matter. Yes, but so do boundaries. Because sometimes the bravest choice isn't holding on. It's choosing peace, even when it hurts. Sometimes the people meant to protect us are the ones who hurt us most. What would you have done if your own family asked you to vanish?